Is Marcus Smart the defensive player of the year like his teammates want him to be? We're going to get through that and kind of crap all over the system a little bit. Plus, the case for Ime Udoka. I think he's got a strong case for Coach of the Year, and I'm going to tell you why right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine Monday through Friday and your first listen every day. Really do appreciate you doing that. This show is free. It's available everywhere podcasts exist, and the show is on YouTube. Please watch the show on YouTube. I'm John Karalis. I am the beat writer who covers the Boston Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, which on the YouTube channel you can see behind me over here. You can pick that up. You got Mother's Day, Father's Day coming up soon. If mom or dad are a Celtics fan, you want to give them something unique, a signed book available on my website for $30, johnkaralis.com. I was also one of the media voters for the Celtics 75th anniversary team. You can see that book over here on YouTube. So today we are going to talk about Ime Udoka, the case for and against him being Coach of the Year. We'll get into some of the Defensive Player of the Year discussion, which has been kind of raging along here over the past couple of days. And we're going to do it with Tom Westerholm of Boston.com. BDC is what the cool kids are calling Boston.com.
Hey.
And, BSJ, BDC, whatever. I don't know where it's going like that. Let's get your thoughts, though, first on the game. The Celtics beating the Golden State Warriors. Was it 110-88 the other night? What was your biggest takeaway there from that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think my takeaway was just it was cool to see the Celtics defense get back to where where it had been previously. I thought Steph Curry obviously going out made a huge just an astronomical difference in how they defended. It's just like even when Jordan Poole gets going, obviously just the way Steph warps a defense is completely different. But I actually thought the Celtics were holding up really well against Steph in the early going. I thought that, the way they defend is pretty well suited for the Warriors. They're very good against them. And I mean that, that shows up last night. That shows up in their record against the Warriors in recent contests. I mean, they've been beating them. So it's interesting because it was another good win against another really, really good team. And you come away from it being like, I wonder what I should write about. I wonder what I should podcast about. It's just like,
right.
They were good. They're a good team. They beat another good team. They're 21-16 against teams above 500. They're very good. I think they're ready for the playoffs. I think wherever they end up, they're going to be very, very tough to beat. So yeah, it was nothing too groundbreaking, but just again, the defense was really fun to watch.
I think we still, I don't know how many people still have this feeling. It's that first impression syndrome. Like if you meet me and if I walked into the Mass Live offices and your first impression was like, boy, that dude's a dick. Like I could have just been having a bad day. And but for like a long time or maybe forever, you'd be like, well, I think Karalis is kind of a dick, but he's okay, I guess, as opposed to, you loving and adoring me at this point.
We'll see what the reverse actually happened. I walked in and you were nice the first day and you've been a dick ever since. So you tricked me on the first day. So
right.
To your point, that's exactly
right. So now you still kind of like, I'm going to give him a chance. I'm going to give him a chance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he was nice that one time.
I'm just trying to get back to that first day. I'm trying to get back to that point.
Right. And so the Celtics had November and December and we're like, there's always kind of like this kind of fear, this like, Did this? Oh, they missed this one rebound. Does this mean they're reverting back? This they didn't get back on defense this one play. Like, oh, here they go. Oh, bad habits. Jayson Tatum had a few bad turnovers in the third quarter. I think he got a little loose. He got a little sloppy, and it becomes like the whole, oh my God, did they? are they going back to their old thing? And I think we just have to get into our minds that this team is just good. Like you look at this, 42-28, alone in the 4th seed. Like you said, that a winning record against teams above 500. They are
the best record in the East against teams above 500.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you just look at everything that they have. If you just put that out of your mind and do the classic, all right, if I were to tell you at the beginning of the season that heading into, we're in the middle of March and the Celtics are 42-28 and they've got 21-16 and all blah, 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 blah. You'd be like, oh, yeah, man, what a great season. This has been a great season. Just because they got a bunch of their losing done early and now they're getting all of their winning done, we're still in, they've turned it around. And we have been kind of like reticent to declare this team like just a flat out good team. And I think maybe we should just start thinking of them as just a good team. Celtics are a good team.
Yep. No, I think it's that simple. I do think it's kind of funny when you go on Cleaning the Glass. I was looking at this yesterday. Their expected wins based on I know I've cited this stat before. Their expected wins based on their net rating is 55.5 or 55.3 or something like that. Like the way they've been playing, they should be a 55 win team. They've actually left per their net rating. They've actually left 5 wins on the board still, which is funny because that number has actually gone up. They're like as the season has gone on. So they are, they have always had the makings of a good team. It's just that for a while they were not cashing in on those wins, but now they are. And I think the fact that the way that you would expect them to be is a very good sign for just, again, like you said, just a good team, not no real qualifiers necessary.
Yeah, no, we got to stop with the qualifiers. Although people want to throw a qualifier on Marcus Smart in some ways, and at least labels on Marcus Smart. One of them is the dirty label, which I think at this point we've moved past it. Draymond Green came out and said that wasn't a dirty play. I would have done the same thing. Or like, if Smart's play, if I thought Smart's play was dirty, I would have tried to rip his head off. And that makes total sense. Like if anybody gets it, Draymond Green gets it. I think, and it's funny. I heard Brad Stevens kind of talk about this on Toucher and Rich when Steve Kerr goes out after the game, and still after having the benefit of review and all of that stuff, he says, I still think it was a dangerous play. He's still like, he's doing this because he's trying to make sure like the referees are aware. He's trying to make sure that he's backing up his guy. He's got other motivations. And Brad's like, yeah, sometimes when you come to a post-game setting and you have a point to make and you can either answer questions directly or you might not. And he said it with a laugh, but it's like, sometimes when you got a point to make, you're going to make that point one way or another, whether it's right or wrong. You got to get this point across. And I really think that's part of what Steve Kerr was doing with this play.
I think that's plausible. I mean, I think that's certainly a plausible explanation. It's certainly the explanation that you would give if you are trying to be kind of conciliatory towards Steve Kerr. And look, I thought last night, my point with Steve Kerr was that if you like, I thought it was weird and a little bit of an overstep on his part to go after Smart the way he did. I've never really loved like coaches going after opposing players, especially in the NBA. It's just like these are grown men, dude. Like I don't know. But I also think that if you're being fair, and I said this on Twitter, if you're being fair to Steve Kerr, if there is one coach in the NBA who you understand being very protective of his guys, especially his stars, because he has experienced a lot of injuries to his players and just like bad luck. There's one guy you can kind of understand being skittish. It's probably Steve Kerr. And especially like, you see Steph go down like that. Look, I wouldn't call Smart's play like, I mean, you could call it dangerous if you want, because like, But if so, it was just a basketball play.
I mean,
like,
you can call it dangerous because diving for the ball is inherently dangerous. I mean,
exactly. And I disagree with you slightly on Draymond. I thought Draymond really wanted, I think Draymond looked at the play and saw that it was not anything besides just a dive for the loose ball. But I think he still wanted to say something because he started saying, maybe you could call it unnecessary. Like he was trying to kind of put this point on it that like, well, maybe it was unnecessary. It wasn't like a perfect play. I was like, well, I don't know, Draymond. Like Marcus came up with the ball, like, right. Like Steph didn't, and like maybe it was kind of necessary to dive because Smart came up with it.
I got the ball, right?
And obviously Draymond, he had the very funny line where he was like, shit happens when it came to Smart, like kicking the ball out of Clay's hands because Draymond put it, he's like, I've kicked somebody before. I very much enjoyed that, but I did think that Draymond tried to leave a little bit of like, I don't know, like maybe a little bit of doubt.
Maybe.
But obviously Steph's his guy, and
sure.
Kind of same thing with Steve Kerr, right? Like, and maybe they coordinated, right? Maybe they both were like, hey, like let's try to have a message here. So,
well, we didn't hear anything from the league, and I don't think we're going to hear anything.
Which again, if you watch the play, clearly we were not going to hear anything from the league. Like it was
obviously, but to hammer that point home, we didn't hear anything from the league. So right. Like if it was anything that Steve Kerr was saying, we would have, and especially with Marcus Smart, because Marcus Smart has priors, and they're very willing to hit him with elevated fines and or suspensions. So none of this, that nor the kick, were anything that the league has announced any punishment on. So moving on. Although I do want to say, like I said yesterday in the podcast, I do not believe Marcus Smart when he said I wasn't trying to kick the ball. I 100%. I've watched the play a bunch of times. I know Marcus Smart is in complete control of his body. I do not believe that even Marcus Smart airborne is so out of control that happened. I'm sorry. I just don't buy it. I know he said it, and maybe we should just take him at his word. I just don't believe that he wasn't trying to kick at the ball on his way by. I just think I thought that kick was him trying to make a play. Yeah. And be like, I'll try to kick the ball free. And okay, so if it's a violation or whatever, he's just trying everything he can to make a play.
It's Occam's razor with Smart. It's like, okay, what's the most likely scenario here? Is the most likely scenario that Marcus Smart was out of control and he was just kind of flailing out in the air? Or is it much more likely that Marcus Smart was in the air, saw an opportunity to try to knock the ball loose, kind of like just everything was happening so fast that he didn't kind of realize that was a flagrant foul and, kicked the ball and ended up getting tangled up? That one to me seems like much more Marcus Smart, is like trying to make a play even though you are midair flying past a guy and just kind of like, ooh, I could kick it.
Yeah.
That sounds like Marcus Smart. Again, nothing malicious.
Yeah, it's so quick,
I think that's really important because I think that's something where people get messed up sometimes is they see these basketball plays happen and they think that everything is intentional because they saw it 14 times in slow motion and once in real time. You have to watch it in real time. These games happen very fast. Everything happens very fast, instantaneously. People are making split-second decisions. That seems much more likely to me that a split-second thing happened.
I just feel like, first of all, it is a testament in a roundabout way. What I'm saying is a bit complimentary towards Marcus Smart, because it is amazing to me that a guy could fly through the air like, oh crap, I bit on this fake. And in that literally like half a second, he's flying, he's this, and he's like, oh, I got a kick. And like halfway past, he says, oh, this is an option. And he now at that point, that's where the momentum comes into play, because he's not kicking normally. And the momentum does carry the kick into Klay Thompson. And okay, was it the right decision? No. It was it was a bad decision. And I understand, like, just like any play, if the bounce pass is going to a backdoor cutter and you go to try to kick it, you're just trying to look. It's desperation.
Yeah,
it was a poor decision, a funny decision, and luckily no one got injured in this decision. But I still, having watched the play over and over again, I still believe that it was, in fact, a decision. And
I agree. Yep. I agree.
We'll leave it at that. Shout out to Marcus Smart for being like just whatever it takes to get a play, which brings us to does a play like this? What a transition! Does a play like this mean that he's our defensive player of the year?
There it is.
There it is. Is the willingness to kick somebody in the face on the way by evidence that you should be the defensive player of the year? That and Ime Udoka's case for coach of the year coming up next. They told me to tease the segments, and I'm teasing the segments. Damn it. That's coming up next. First, BetOnline. Hey, college basketball is back. Tons of upsets in the first round of the tournament, but not for the Friars, though. Friars moving on. My PC Friars. So go to BetOnline. Check out everything, the latest odds, contests, player props. BetOnline.net, the number one source for all of your betting needs. Information, scores, podcasts, news, everything you want. And it's not just basketball, although why would you not bet on basketball? This is the best time of year for basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for live betting, wagering information, Vegas casino games. Your favorite Vegas casino games are there too. Head on over to the website or use your mobile device, whichever one you want to use. Learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. How about making your second listen Locked On Now? It's a great recap of the night in the NBA, although this night in the NBA was one game because of the tournament, so you get a quick recap of the Pistons and Magic. Hey, Sadiq Bey went for 50, so must be fun over there. Check out Locked On Now, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to watch it on YouTube, it's on the Locked On NBA feed. Let's bring Tom_NBA back into the discussion. After the game last night, Jayson Tatum interrupts Abby Chin's post-game interview with Marcus Smart to give him a big hug and say, this dude right here is the defensive player of the year. Smart has made this case for himself many, many times over many years. Robert Williams is in the discussion. You tweeted out, you had a tweet the other day that said something like, the more stats you dig into to figure this out, the more they point to Al Horford as being the guy. But are there any Celtics here? Is Marcus Smart? Do any of these guys, do you think, have a real case for being defensive player of the year?
Look, I think they have a case in, like, it's tough because I think they have a case as a team, right? They are the number one defense in the NBA. They're like, that's tough to argue with. And I think it gets really interesting because the numbers all point a certain way, right? Like they all point toward big men, and that's why big men keep winning. But I think to Marcus Smart's point, like defensive numbers, every analyst will agree that defensive numbers are the weakest of the stats, right?
Yes.
That it is the hardest to measure defense by the numbers. So if you have a Marcus Smart, and if you have a bunch of teammates who all say Marcus Smart is the best defender on the team, like you have Robert Williams, who is also getting, kind of some chatter for defensive player of the year. You have Robert Williams being like, it's Marcus. You have Ime Udoka making the case for Marcus Smart. Obviously, some of that is, making the case for your teammate. And some of that, I'm sure, is like, hey, elder statesman, right? Like Marcus has been here for a long time. What's Rob Williams going to do? Be like, no, it should be me, not the guy who's been here forever.
Right.
But at the same time, we all, the numbers that I was kind of digging into, they're like the really advanced stuff that, like, if you don't have a really good sense of formulas and all of that thing, like, I don't know how Raptor is calculated. I don't know how D LeBron is calculated. Those are the ones that like Al Horford, the really advanced ones. Mm-hmm. And they do like Robert Williams more than they like Marcus Smart. A lot of them, take into account impact and, certain things that, in terms of on-off stats, that kind of thing. But again, defense, we do not have a way to quantify defense in a way that really explains it well. And I think with that one, you really do kind of have to take your stats, certainly, take your on-offs, your metrics, all that. But I think defense, you really do have to kind of consider, okay, what are people saying about this guy? Is this a guy that people don't want to play against? Is this a guy that's quarterbacking the defense because everybody on the team says it? Is this a guy that his head coach is going to come out and make a fairly impassioned case for him when his head coach is not known for making impassioned cases in the media? That's not something Ime does.
Right.
So right. I think if you want to make the case for Marcus Smart, I think that's how you do it. And it's hard because journalists want to be right. We want to be able to, and to be right, you have to be able to quantify things. But I don't think you can quantify defense. So if you want to make the case for Smart, I think you can. And I think it does not come down to numbers. Numbers just don't tell the story here. And that's not an eye test thing. That's just everybody who looks at these formulas is it doesn't measure defense.
Right. The numbers will always, the reason why it's a big man's award is because the numbers increasingly favor the big men. You have the blocks, you have the rebounds, you have, if a guy comes in, like Doc Rivers used to make this argument all the time. Rebounding is defense. If you go out there and you're the guy that ends a good defensive possession by grabbing the rebound, then it's very obvious. He's averaging 12 defensive rebounds a game and 3 block shots a game. And you go, oh, well, there he is. That's a big reason why. But Marcus Smart makes a great point about hey, look, man, these guys got to get by us first. And those guys, the best defenders are averaging what? 3? I haven't even looked it up, but it's usually somewhere around 3-4 blocks a game. Well, okay. Most teams are taking 80-something shots, 90 shots if you're a faster paced team. So 4 blocks in that, they are loud. Those are very noticeable, but you're blocking 4 shots, which means four times they get past the perimeter, and it's now up to you, the shot blocker, to say, okay, none of this, which we saw Robert Williams do against Golden State. Okay, that's great. And super important defensively. But how many more times are players like Marcus Smart and perimeter defenders in general stopping players from getting to the rim at all? What's the quantifiable stat there? Is there a defensive slide? How many times have you turned a guy on defense? How many times have you had a guy that is dribbling and wants to get to the rim and you stop him and he gives the ball up, and that qualifies as, well, that's good defense, and there's no metric for that other than, you start looking at some on-off numbers, because generally you say, okay, there's a box plus minus that can say, all right, when he's on the floor, then by getting those stops, inherently the other team's going to stop scoring. And so that will fuel your case. But Smart is correct. We want to measure, how many steals are you getting per game? All right, well, you get a couple of steals, you get 2-3, that's fine. But there are guys who also get steals that are terrible defenders. They just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And great, you jump a passing lane. That's awesome. But you can't guard me, and I'm old and fat. So it's tough. And I don't know that Marcus Smart is obviously we're going to make the case. Smart should be in contention for this. And Rob certainly has a case too. And Al Horford certainly has a case too. And this is part of this is going to be one of those things where I think, Tom, because those 3 guys have a case, it's going to be very easy for people to say, well, yes, Marcus Smart is great, but Rob is great. Al is great. Jayson Tatum's pretty good. Jaylen Brown is pretty good. Plus that system, everybody's good.
Yep.
Everybody's good. That's what makes them the best. And we can't pick one guy from all of this. We can say you're the best defense, and you put a couple of these guys on the all defensive team, but to pick one guy it's much more likely for somebody to go like, well, look at what Giannis does. Look at what Gobert does and say that is the one supremely gifted defensive player that does so much. And we can see it. So it's obvious and there we'll vote for it.
Yeah. It's the same kind of principle as like that the Suns are just demolishing everything in their path and they're not going to have an MVP candidate.
Right.
Devin Booker is all NBA third team. Like I don't like, and he's probably the only one who's going to get on there. It's the same thing, right? They just have a ton of really good players, and they're all going to take away from each other in that way. I think, I wrote about this on Boston.com about a week ago, and there were some really interesting tracking stats that I just pulled up here. So and these actually favor, I think they do a little bit of justice to Rob Williams, actually. So Smart contests more shots than the average guard at 11.4 per game. Rob Williams contests 13.8, so more, and his impact is far higher. Players shoot 6.4% lower percentage than their percentages with Rob guarding them, whereas it's something like 2 point something with Smart. So the impact of that is notable. And then inside 6 feet, that actually goes way up, which, I mean, that's not a surprise. Rob's a great, defender at the rim. It's like, but it's almost like 10%. Like against Rob, people shoot 53.2% inside 6 feet as opposed to 62%. So he makes a huge difference inside, and it's on quite a few attempts per game. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, both players contest about 5 3-pointers per game, both Rob and Smart.
Yeah.
And they both, again, they have a very similar Rob impacts the 3-pointers to about 3.7% lower, Smart to about 3.1% lower. So, I think some of those tracking stats are interesting. You can't rely on them to be perfect per the end, and the NBA doesn't give you an opportunity to kind of click on it and kind of check their work, which is too bad. But they do they do point to Rob being very impactful, and maybe impactful in a way that it doesn't detract from how good Smart is, but it might detract from his case, just because you start looking at some of those tracking numbers and Rob is really impressive. It is not a one-person show. Maybe it's Smart directing things, and maybe everybody can make the case for Smart, on the team. But the other guys are doing a lot, and it shows up. It shows up when you watch the games. It also shows up in the numbers. I know I just said you can't quantify these things. I'm not trying to make an all-encompassing case. I'm just saying that I do think it is important to look at numbers as well. You just can't make them your whole case when it comes to defense.
No, it's true. It's true. This might be the hardest award to hand out, the hardest major award to hand out, because the other stuff, I mean, MVP, you can have debates, but it's pretty easy to be okay, it's obvious who the candidates are.
Yes,
exactly. And then when you want to break a tie, the case between Embiid and Jokic is going to be just if you really want to take it seriously, you have to boil it down way down to the nitty gritty to some of the advanced numbers. But you can still say you can pick out 4 or 5 guys and say, here's your MVP candidates, and very easy. The 6th man of the year and all that stuff. Defensive player of the year is going to be super, super tough. I just feel like guys are going to voters are going to default to their old habits, and it's going to be some of the same stuff. I do think that they're going to try to make up for it by saying, all right, we can't give Marcus Smart all defense, but here's Smart and Robert Williams on first team all defense, and just here, congratulations. That's going to be the way we acknowledge you. So.
I think that's likely. I also just a minor rant. I've never been a huge Rudy Gobert guy. I just it. Who would you rather have in a playoff setting defensively, Marcus Smart or Rudy Gobert?
Oh yeah, no, I get that. I totally get that. I get how impactful he is. I get all of that stuff, but just. I mean, look, I know I'm not making an unpopular case. Plenty of people on the internet agree with me, but it's just this dude gets roasted every year in the playoffs. People have figured him out. Maybe they don't. At least they figured him out in a series setting. Maybe not your individual game. And defensive player of the year is a regular season award, but
the Rudy Gobert case, every year it just feels like he's in the conversation, and every year I'm just like, but why?
The numbers,
It's the
again,
numbers.
it's the numbers. The numbers say with him on the floor, the point differential is whatever. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
it's
the
it's
plus
big
minus
in the
are
regular season.
huge with him on the floor, and you take him off the floor, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And like that's the number one thing. And obviously, he's got the blocks and the rebounds. And the bottom line, the flawed premise for Defensive Player of the Year, really, it's not necessarily telling you who the best defender is. It's just telling you who's got the biggest defensive impact in the regular season, potentially. And the fact is that when you're in the regular season, teams will go and make adjustments to some degree for their opponents, but generally teams in the regular season are just spending the entirety of it trying to do what they do, hone in what they do, figure out what they do, get it better, like the switching, the ball movement, all that. It's all about getting what you do best to be as honed as it possibly can by the time you start the playoffs. And then you start making adjustments for other teams. You don't change your starting lineup to go against Rudy Gobert in the regular season. You do it in the playoffs because now you've got to beat them 4 out of 7 times. And then you have a formula for beating him in those scenarios. It doesn't take away what he's done in the regular season and all of those circumstances. But at the same time, it does create one hell of a scenario here where you've got a guy who has like obvious impact during the regular season. Like everything is obvious.
Unquestionably.
Obvious.
Yes.
You know, if I got David Locke on here, he would be like, he'd be reading us the riot act and all these numbers. I'd be like, yeah, you're right. Yep. Give him the award. Go ahead, give him the award. Doesn't mean anything though, because when you take the Celtics defense into the postseason, you're going to rely on this Celtics defense. You're going to rely on them to do what they do because of the way they play, who they're playing, and all that stuff. That Jazz defense, everybody's like, ooh, okay, has Rudy figured out how to switch? Has the perimeter? And it's like the underrated part of it is it's not just Rudy. It's Rudy. What Rudy can't do is help and recover the way Rob does. Like that's the thing. The perimeter defense in Utah gets beat, and Rudy comes over to help, and then there's no recovery there. The Celtics defense is so great because they help each other, and when Rob comes over to help, there's somebody to help him out, and then when Rob gets back and that person takes a shot, Rob can go back and block that shot. Like, Rudy is just too slow. He can do one of those things, and he can't do the other stuff, and that's where the whole thing falls apart. We're getting way too deep into Rudy Gobert stuff, but I always invite the Rudy Gobert slander because it's accurate.
Well, but it's very pertinent to this conversation because he keeps winning Defensive Player of the Year. So it's like you have to figure out. Look, that's why I think Giannis makes a lot of sense because like Giannis is deeply impactful, and you can see how you can also see how it translates like across the board. Look, I've probably been watching the Celtics for way too long, and I probably internalized Brad Stevens talking about versatility way too much to the point that I'm just like, yes, just give it to Marcus Smart or Mikal Bridges or Giannis or whoever it is.
Right.
Any of those guys who are versatile and can do a bunch of different things. That's what I don't like about the Rudy case is like, I get that he is very impactful. Like I'm obviously doing some hyperbole when I'm people haven't figured it out. Like, of course, that's somewhat hyperbole, but at the same time, what you just said is the thing that he does. It is he blocks shots, he rotates over, he protects the rim at an incredible level. He's really good at it, but like that's it. Like Giannis can protect the rim and he can do a bunch of other things. Yeah. That's why he's a great.
Yeah, Giannis.
You talk about Marcus Smart, you talk about Mikal Bridges. These are guys who do a lot of things on the defensive end, and in the modern NBA, that just feels like. Yep. That just feels like the most important thing to me.
I think you're right. Smart and Bridges would be if you're putting together a defense to go against some of the Kevin Durant. Would I rather have Gobert, or would I rather have Smart or Mikal Bridges or the Celtics defense as it operates? I think the answer is obvious, but it is what it is. All right. We'll get into the Ime Udoka discussion because I think there's a real argument to make for Coach of the Year there. That's coming up next. First, I'll tell you about Athletic Greens and their new AG1. Now, I made a joke. I'm old and fat. So when you get old and fat, you got to really watch what you're doing. I got to adjust my lifestyle. And AG1, the Athletic Greens, are going to help me do that. It's basically one scoop that helps you absorb 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens, and it's going to start your day right. You get a water bottle type thing. It's measured out. You put a scoop of that in with your water. You drink it in the morning before you have breakfast, and it's going to get you some quick acting, all of that stuff that I just mentioned to get into your body, to make sure you get the nutrients to start your day. It's hard as a beat writer when I'm flying around all over the place to eat right. It's just tough, and it's tough for you. I'm sure you got kids. You're probably just eating scraps off your kids' plates, and you're worried about your nutrition. So you get a scoop of AG1, and it's going to make sure that you get all of the stuff you need. It's lifestyle friendly, so if you're keto, if you're paleo, if you're vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, it works. It works within any of those lifestyles. Non-GMO. It's basically a small micro habit with big benefits. It's the one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself, and it only costs about $3 a day. So you're investing in your health. It's cheaper than some of the other things that you're doing. And it's going to probably give you enough energy where you can maybe cut back on some of that coffee too. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews. It's recommended by professional athletes, trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. So head on over to athleticgreens.com/NBA network. All right. It's time to reclaim your health, arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially now that we're in cold and flu season. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Now, I add that to my routine of working out, and now that I'm going to get back into the gym, got to get out of this. Now that we've switched to daylight savings, I've got enough sunlight to get me out of my funk. I'm getting back in the gym. I'm going to grab a Built Bar. I'm going to put that in my bag too, because when I get there and I do my cardio and I do my lifting, I get a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, so it's like a little reward at the end. And each one is about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. So if you're getting 100-something calories in a bar, that's not blowing out the cardio that you're doing. You're going to end up, if you're trying to get that negative caloric balance, then this can help you there. 17 grams of protein is going to help feed the muscles that I've just torn in that weight room, getting back into it, acting like a kid that I'm not again, but I'm going to still try and pretend that I am. Get in there and, throw some weight around. So grab a Built Bar, go to Built.com, check them out, scroll over each product there, and it'll give all your nutritional information. You get to see all the great flavors that they have. And you get the promo code LOCKED15. It's going to give you 15% off every single time. So no pressure. Don't go in there and use it once and feel like you have to stock up. Use it every single time. So get one box if you want. Get a sampler box. Get whatever. You can always go back, and I feel like you're going to go back because they're awesome. Locked15 gets you 15% off every single time at Built.com. All right, Tom. I think Ime Udoka has a great case for Coach of the Year. You want to hear why?
I do.
Okay.
No, I don't. I take it back. Let's call it.
All right. Thanks for listening to the podcast, everybody. Here's the thing. Coach of the Year is the most narrative-based award. All right. And it's always based on our preseason expectations. So Cavs came into the season, they're supposed to suck, right? And whatever, you got to have a mold, that's nice, but you're supposed to suck. Oh, you don't suck? Well, must be JB Bickerstaff. I mean, it's got to be the coaching, right? Like if they are this far above our expectation, we can't be wrong. we were right. It's just that the coach was so good that he has to be a candidate for coach of the year. Phoenix, that was a nice run. They got lucky. Chris Paul, like whatever. Oh, wait, they're awesome again. Look at this. They don't even have Chris Paul for a while. And look at they're awesome. We can't be wrong. It's got to be Monty Williams. And on top of it all, Monty gets, was second place last year. Tom Thibodeau. Look at the Knicks. We got to make up for that mistake and give Monty the award this year. And these guys are all very worthy coaches. Like there's a lot of coaches that could win this every year. Eric Spoelstra can get it in Miami every year. Greg Popovich has had a claim for it for a while. The thing though that I think makes Ime a candidate is that he has tangible results that are very clearly tied to a lot of his coaching, which the switching defense was new, and early on they were terrible at it, and they figured out how to do it, and now their defense is number one. They were trying to share the ball, and they were trying to trust each other, and he's trying to get Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown to expand their games. And now look at Jayson Tatum. He's playing a little bit differently, and now the offense is starting to be a lot better, and that's directly tied to Ime Udoka. There are tangible results for the Celtics early this season when he wasn't getting the full buy-in or they weren't properly executing everything. They would do it in spurts, but they wouldn't do it for the whole game. They were bad or mediocre. And then once they started doing everything consistently, the storyline, the narrative is once they started getting into what Ime Udoka was trying to get them to do, then they started taking off. Now, that did coincide with good health, and that did coincide with better shooting, and that's certainly part of it. But for the first time in a while, we have a coach here who we've seen his team be mediocre, and then once they started doing all of the things that he was telling them to do, now they're the best record since January 1st. And so that to me says, well, if there's a coach of the year, like that guy has a strong case because coaching has now gotten this team to be go from a 500 team to a contender, really, a team that has a legitimate shot at getting to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and I think you add into that the fact that the Celtics looked so much like the team that they were last year for the first part of the season, and then it does seem like a lot of those adjustments were, at very least there was coaching involved in some of the reasons that they've gotten better. You look at the fact that they looked like themselves last year at the beginning of the year, and now they look like a completely different team. I think that adds to the case as well. I think it's a strong case. Again, I think you're right that so much of it is narrative based. I don't really have any counters to any of that. I think
I win.
But you don't win because it's because there's a lot of narratives out there, right? Like it's just going to come down to, I think, the voters choosing which narrative they like the best. Do you like the Cleveland narrative? Do you like the Phoenix narrative? Do you like the Celtics narrative? Choose your favorite story. And the problem with, I think, Coach of the Year is that it's interesting. If the Celtics next season are just like a good team, they just kind of continue along these good vibes. They've got like this, they got this like this 55 win, point differential. If they end up with 53 wins next year, I would not be surprised if Ime Udoka does not sniff Coach of the Year, because there will be a new fun narrative for everybody to latch on to. Yep. And that new fun narrative will be the one that voters are like, ooh, I like that one. Let's do that one instead of the one that we did that, instead of making up for last year. That's probably why Monty Williams has this case this year, because voters are trying to correct themselves for the Tom Thibodeau one that they screwed up last year. The Knicks were.
The Knicks were good last year. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. But I think it is kind of interesting that it's almost hard to see, even if the Celtics are good again next year, it's hard to see Ime winning it next year, just purely because like the narrative will have moved on. So, look, I think it's a good case. I think if If Ime wants to win Coach of the Year, if his players want to want him to win Coach of the Year, they should start making that case, because also in the media we all have goldfish brains, so we'll just remember the last thing that people tell us about Coach of the Year. I feel like so. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, no, look, you're right. Monty Williams will get the award, I think, this year, and it's absolutely 100% deserved. They're probably
he's really good, man.
He's really, really good. Like I don't want to make it sound like I'm dismissing or downplaying his candidacy. I'm not. I just think that what Ime has done, my argument is more like get him votes. I don't think, like, I'm not going to sit here and say he should be Coach of the Year, but he should be more in the discussion for Coach of the Year. I think that it's worth throwing him into and elevating him to the point where it's like, all of the things that I just laid out are important.
Yeah.
And this progression, especially for Tatum and hopefully Brown, he can be a little healthier and all of that stuff. And he can kind of get back to playing his normal self, like his normal self. That'll be helpful. And maybe next year, I think if anything, next year might be his best chance at winning because what people are going to say is, okay, we're giving it to Monty for the 2022 season because he deserves it. First of all the stuff that we said, we're going to make note of Ime. We're just going to make note of it. And we're going to make note of like JB Bickerstaff. We're going to make note of, Jenkins and Met. We're going to make note of all of these guys. And just it feels like some of these awards are always like a year behind. Let's just, if the Celtics go from however many wins this year to 50 plus next year, and Tatum is playing like he's averaging like 8 assists and all, then we can be like, okay, look, this is the coaching again. And like, we couldn't give it to him last year because of circumstances. He didn't do it for the full year. Now that he's doing it for the full year, we can give it to him, because I think the argument against it is, sure, he's turned things around and he's done a great coaching job to get the Celtics here, and that makes him one of the best coaches in the league this year. He started out not being very good and making some decisions that were like, like playing Dennis Schroeder the way he did and getting through some things the way he did and some of the lineups and that, there was a learning curve there that he had to like figure things out. And so that learning curve for a rookie head coach, natural, but I think voters are going to be like, nice job, but Monty did it all year and he's got the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
You did a great job. We'll put a pin in it. But the first couple of months, as much as that is part of the narrative for your argument, you still had them. And that would be that's going to be like the tiebreaker against him.
Yes. I think, there's a point for Ime that I think gets kind of under discussed, which is, we talk about, okay, well, like obviously the Celtics aren't going to have the defensive player of the year because it's like, it's all part of their system. And it's like, well, who put the system in place? Should that guy be Coach of the Year? But you can then make that same case for Monty in the same way, where it's like, okay, like, yeah, I mean, the Suns have a great system. It's like, okay, so who put the system in place? Was it Monty? Then like, okay, yeah, like the team that's just like, just mashing everybody. Yeah, like they could probably have an award. That would probably be fine.
Sure, yeah. And all the stuff that I'm saying, I'm sure like a Dallas Mavericks fan could enter the chat and be like, hello, Jason Kidd did the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. There's some good coaches out there. I'll say it.
Yeah. I mean, it pains me to make that case for Jason Kidd, but he's figured some stuff out, and it's been working in Dallas.
They've been really good.
Yep. It's been excuse me, and the narrative is almost exactly this. The Mavericks and the Celtics are fucking carbon copies of each other.
Yeah, they really are. Down to having the star, like the future star and the future MVP candidate in the league. Like they are very close.
It's so wild that the turnaround came at the same time based on their defense. The star, like, it's so much of it is so similar. It's wild.
Yeah.
They even got green in their team colors. All right, I'm starting to choke to death. So, so this is going to be a great time for me to wrap up the podcast.
This is what happens when we go long. Your throat starts to just go, nope.
My body is revolting on me. My body's basically saying, John, shut up, which is what a lot of people say around me. So I'm going to do that. Thanks to Tom Westerholm, Tom_NBA on the tweets. I'm John_Karalis, team _. Thank you for listening to the show. If you're still with us, if you're new and you're still with us, I think that means you've enjoyed about an hour of basketball and Celtics podcasting. It's been a fantastic hour. We'll call it a double episode because we're heading into the weekend. If you didn't get through the whole thing, cut it in half and then listen to it later, which is a terrible piece of advice for me to give you at the end. I should have given you that piece of advice in the middle of it, but here I am. I've got nowhere else to go with this. So thanks for listening. If you're listening or if you're watching the show on YouTube, please, would love for you to subscribe there. And if you're a subscriber, I'd really appreciate it if you shared the podcast, told your friends, tell all your friends, tell your family that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.